Now, lifeadministration.com presents the Life Administration Podcast. Here are your hosts, Leslie Loftus and Ryan Talon.
All right, so now that we get the dog out of here, we're all squared away.
We had a visit from the wolfhound.
Yeah. Got hair all over me. Okay, feeling good.
There you go.
Feeling good.
Shake it off.
Yeah. Hi, Leslie.
Good afternoon.
Yes, afternoon. Yeah.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
What's happening? What's been going on since the last time I saw you?
Well, the same thing since the episode that we just recorded because we're in a marathon recording session.
So
I'm on.
So nothing different from 30 minutes ago.
Nothing different from 30 minutes ago. I am still on day 3 of my 5-day kid-free zone for the summer. Which is why we're having the marathon.
So if you're downloading this episode on a weekly basis, it's like she's not going to have kids for 5 weeks. But she never has kids. What's going on? Anyway, welcome to Life Administration. My name is Ryan Talon. With me, as always, is Leslie Loftus. And this is episode 2 or 3, depending on if you just listened to our last episode, because we made the faux pas of saying household management was going to be number 1.
No. Life plan.
Life planning was going to be the first episode.
There we go.
And Money 101 was going to be the second episode. However, we have decided to switch that because of scripting.
Because Ryan already set it up that way.
Yes, there we go. That's it. Blame me.
Under the bus
you
go.
Yep. Back it up. Just like my wife at home. No. Anyway, she hears that one. It's not going to be good for me.
You're dead man.
What episode is staying together? Marriage? Okay.
That would be 4, I believe. Yeah.
Don't say stuff like that.
Very good tip.
All right. So let's set the table today. We are talking about Money 101, and with that is going to be a lot of household budgeting. So I'm very excited that we picked such an easy topic to start with. Just kidding.
Because actually, it's not that easy of a topic. I mean, it seems like an easy topic because people don't really think about it most often unless it's not going well. And so, the gears are going unless they start grinding. And then when they start grinding, well, then you think about it a lot. But by then you're doing retro work.
Yeah.
So.
And I think for me, where it sort of starts from, and I mean, I know this is like very basic, but I think it needs to be said. It's like, okay, how much money are you making? And how much money are you spending? And how much money are you saving? Those are at the end of the day, when you boil it down to the most basic principles, those are the categories, right? Really kind of understanding everything starts there. So let's get into it, right?
Right.
Skill number 1, let's go. Creating a household budget. Let's talk a little bit about this. And as a quick side note, we are going to have a mini cast for this. It'll be on the website. So that mini cast will actually be us going through and doing all the things that we've talked about today.
We'll put together an imaginary budget.
So it's going to be like you're going to be over Leslie's shoulder. She's going to walk us through step by step exactly what this looks like, maybe some different templates that she uses, really get into the nitty gritty of everything. Today is going to be a little bit more of a 10,000 foot view down, right?
Overview.
So, maybe some concepts that you can apply to yourself. But if you really want to get into it, mini cast will be up and in the show notes.
It will.
All right.
So the first thing you need to do is you need to get just a basic budgeting template. Apple has one under Simple Budgets. I'm pretty sure that Excel has one as well. So
I think if you Google budgeting templates.
Right, exactly. For our purposes of just basic planning, that will work.
Yeah.
Okay, the next thing you want to do is you want to add in your fixed costs. Okay, so things like your mortgage or your rent, your insurance, your car payment, stuff that is set every month. There's a little bit, utilities are also included here, and obviously sometimes those are variable, so you might need to average them out. You might need to ask somebody in your town or somebody with some experience in the area, because you just might have to guesstimate that at first until you have a couple of months of your own data in order to average it out to figure out what's going on. But
can I offer just, estimate high? Right. Just
always round up a little bit.
So in business, we always talk about this thing called the 10% burden. So whatever you think you're going to make that month, just take 10% off of it.
Right.
Guaranteed, because I'm a self-employed music teacher, so like my income can fluctuate. But even still, like when I had a corporate job, maybe I knew I was going to get a bonus or something like that, right? So
don't assume bonuses.
Yeah, I was accounting.
Don't be a Griswold.
I was counting. Yeah, exactly. Don't be Christmas vacation. don't count on that money.
No.
And so just if the top line number, and I guess what I mean by the top line is your gross revenue or your net
We're
revenue.
We're going to get, because it has to be net. That's one of the big mistakes people make.
Absolutely.
Is they assume gross, which is your total. So let's say you get a job as an accountant and you're getting $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's your gross. It is not your net.
Go get a new job if you're only making $50,000 as an accountant. I'm just kidding.
I'm just throwing out easy numbers. But you have to budget with your net, which means that you need to figure out, and there's all sorts of calculators that online you can find that help you figure out federal income tax, Social Security tax. Now, most of that will be withheld from your paycheck, but the IRS is pretty aggressive about how they withhold money from American paychecks, which is why you get many people of under $75,000 or so a year get a refund in April because they've overpaid through withholding throughout the entire year. Still, you have to budget on your net amount. If you live somewhere besides, say, Texas and Florida, you also have to consider state income taxes.
What are you doing? You should move.
We're in Texas. We think everybody should move.
Yeah.
But you do have to consider, all of a sudden those things can come off. You can't take $50,000 or whatever your take home, whatever your pay is, and just divide it by 12 and figure out your monthly budget.
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Nope.
It doesn't work that way. So the next would be variable costs, right? So we talked a little bit about fixed. Variable costs would be up next.
Right. Variable costs, and those are the things like your grocery bill, your gas bill, things that are necessary. You need gas to run your car. You need groceries to cook your food. But it's likely to vary month to month, depending on what you're doing. So those you layer in next.
Yeah, and I think if you're trying to make strides in your budget, if you're trying to, let's say you're trying to save for a vacation, this is the first place to look when you're trying to get extra money. Typically,
if you're already in the hole, one of the reasons we're talking about this is that one of them later on, you're going to ask me about what are some of the mistakes that you make. One of the things is people don't start with their net budget. They start with their gross income. And so they make mistakes about what's in their fixed. Okay, so first, all of a sudden you realize you are paying more than you can really afford in rent. Okay, but that's something that you fix. That's why we're doing a budget now before you go out and rent a place, before you get on your own, so that okay, this is kind of my maximum of where my rent can land.
Yeah, ideally this is step one.
Ideally this is step one. But if you're already in the situation and all of a sudden you've got a negative budget coming in, yes, the first place that you look for shaving off is going to be in your, actually it'll be the second because we still have the entertainment costs to go. So you got your incident.
Well, if you're in the hole and you're eating out, well, that's in a whole nother thing. So I'm going to kind of keep recapping this because to me, there's a lot of line items, as it were. So, okay, we start with fixed costs. That sort of is what it is, right? It's not really a whole lot you can do.
Right, you can't do anything about mortgage, you can't do anything about your car payment, your utility bills, your insurance, any homeowners association fees, student debt payments. It's easy to forget them because they don't start becoming due until 6 months after you've got out of school. You feel like they're not there until, oh my gosh, they are.
They're so there.
They are there.
And I can just see somebody in the comment section right now being like, Ryan and Leslie, you absolutely can do something about your car payment. You can refinance it, blah, blah, blah. And they're absolutely right. However, that's sort of not the scope of this particular, right? So we understand that, yes, there are some things that you can do with fixed costs. We're just trying to put things in a category that makes sense.
Right.
So we got fixed costs, we have variable costs. Now the next thing, so you say optionals.
The eating out, entertainment, clothing, all of those incidentals of stuff, travel budget, the stuff that you don't have to do that you perhaps would like to do. And I realize clothing might, especially if you're getting your first job.
I love that you said that, by the way.
You're going to need to budget something for clothing because you're going to need a work wardrobe. Even if you're in a casual office, I'm pretty sure most college wardrobes are not going to be totally office appropriate. So you need to figure that in a bit, but at the same time, these are optional costs.
Yeah, and 30-second commercial break, how you present yourself at work is so critical to rising up the ranks and that sort of thing. So making an investment on the front end of how you look, I think is really important.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now consider your pay, right?
We just talked about
Yep.
this part. You must consider your net pay. Remember to account for your taxes, account for withholding, account for Social Security, account for your health care, which will probably be pulled out of your paycheck, or at least part of it will. Budget only, and then state income taxes, if you have them, budget only with your net amount.
Yep. Okay.
And without including bonuses.
Yeah, without including, because bonuses should just be that.
Bonuses.
Bonus.
Yes, exactly. And then when you obviously, when you subscribe.
Subscribe.
Thank you.
Please subscribe.
When you subscribe, I'm gonna do
Like
it
and
again.
subscribe.
When you subtract your expenses from your net take home, you want a number significantly higher than zero.
Yes.
Zero means that you don't have anything for savings, and you're gonna want savings.
Yeah. So I think where people sort of get tripped up is, all right, I understand this idea of fixed income. I understand that some of my bills might vary. I might have a car problem this month, or my electricity goes up because I need to run the air conditioner. I think, people even understand this idea of like, okay, I want to save money. Well, then I probably shouldn't be eating out as much. I probably shouldn't be going to the movies. I probably should find things or like low cost alternatives. I think people get that. I think what people don't get is sort of the division of funds. How much should I be spending? How much should I be saving? How much can I have for my discretionary spending? What does that look like? And I've seen like, I feel like everybody has an opinion on what this number looks like. I took a quick look at what you had to say. Obviously, I agree with it 100%. So just talk to us a little bit about how people should be divvying up their money.
The general rule of thumb is that you should have 50% going to your living and fixed expenses. You should have 30% going to discretionary entertainment, travel, clothes, etc., and 20% to savings. All right. But there's a few notable gaps in here. One,
super important.
The 50% is not usually explained as including things like student debt.
Right.
Okay? When you are paying off your student debt, that is a fixed, necessary expense. So it needs to be part of the 50%. Well, first of all, because if you're at 50, 30, 20, you don't have anything left over, which is so what people usually do is they forego savings and they use the 20% in order to pay off debt. Now, yes, paying off student debt is in fact an investment. Paying off debt is always an investment strategy. But you need to include the 20% or the paying off of student loans into the 50%. I recommend having of the 50%, having 30% go to your fixed costs like rent, 20% going to debt service. Get it out of your way as quickly as you can. Then you can still have, because 30% is not really a lot. I mean, we're talking about, food and clothing, and especially when you're starting out and you need to build a wardrobe, it's not a lot of money. It's going to feel like when you get your first couple paychecks that you have more money than you thought because you have money coming in now. It's not a lot of money. And then 20% to savings. I'm all for that. The other thing I think the 50, 30, 20 rule forgets, and don't everybody shoot me now because I know this is going to sound impossible.
It's controversial.
No, it just sounds impossible. Tithing. And I don't necessarily, it's obviously a church term about giving 10% of your money to charity or generosity. But in general, the American tradition, we have a heavy tradition of giving charitably.
Yes.
And it's a good habit to form. And even when you're down you want to go ahead and form that habit. Now, I do have a kind of workaround while you're still at the paying off your student loan debt stage. You can give the 10% in kind. So let's say that you make, I like $50,000 a year because it's easier to do the math on. So you make $50,000 a year. Now, tithing, the other thing about generosity is it is actually done on gross pay, not. So when you're giving 10%, now you're giving $5,000. Okay, so figure out generally how many hours or what is $5,000 of in-kind costs. And okay, if you're in church, then go teach Sunday school. If you're not, there are tons of things, and we will get more into this when we talk about community involvement. That's another episode coming up later. But there are tons of things you can do, from planting tree foundations to litter working on political campaigns. But I highly encourage people to consider putting 10% of their blood, sweat, and tears into generosity and giving for others.
In the last episode, we said things that you're going to hear a lot about.
I forgot to add this one yet.
And for me, I like the term 30-second commercial break. So that doesn't mean skip forward 30 seconds, podcast family.
No, because it's
That's
not
what it
actually a
means.
commercial break.
Yeah, this is a mental commercial break. So 30-second commercial break, just about giving, tithing, generosity, gratitude, just all of that in general.
Yes.
The mental benefits that you get from it, the things that it does, the things that it triggers inside of you, honestly, from a scientific standpoint, like I won't even get into like the emotional, that sort of stuff, but the chemicals that it releases, it's just gonna be good for life.
Absolutely.
Right? It's gonna be good for life. So to have an attitude of gratitude,
I like that. An attitude of gratitude, exactly. Whether you're actually paying the 10% tithe or you're doing it in
because
kind,
either you're
don't
grateful,
really care. You need to do
grateful
it.
that you can give it,
Yes.
or you're grateful that somebody else can use it, right? Like,
Right.
It does, like that's a great thing. So, sorry, not too much of a tangent there. So the other thing I want to say is, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm in college and all of a sudden somebody says to me, I'm making $50,000 and now I can only use half of it to live, I'm freaking out.
Correct.
And I'm freaking out, and I'm thinking, like, you don't know my situation, Leslie. You don't know that I actually can't do this, and I need that 20% to pay off my bills and all that sort of stuff. And from someone that has gone through it, I would challenge people to look in the mirror. And I know this is not going to be a super popular opinion, and I understand that people make all sorts of different realms, all over the societal, socioeconomic spectrum, right? I guess that's what the word I'm looking for. I'm a teacher, right? So I get it, right? Some of my best friends are lawyers, right? And so I get all of that sort of things, but I would challenge people to look in the mirror and look at their expenses in that fixed area, or so not in the fixed area, in the variable area and in the entertainment, I guess, for lack of a better term, area, and see what you can do there. Because when I did this, when I went through this exercise myself, when I was a vice president for a Fortune 500 company, and what my budget looked like then versus what it looks like now are two totally different things. And oh, by the way, I didn't have a wife and I didn't have a family. I didn't have a baby. So it can be done. And this is a long game. This is delayed gratification versus short-term gratification.
Right.
In today's world, we're all about short. Can I have it now? Can I have it now? Can I have it now? I promise you that if you can find a way to delay that gratification, save your money, when you're 45, you're looking at the rest of your life like, wow,
right.
I got some life to live. I really had to grind it out for that first, 15 years after I got out of school. But now I can do some things.
Right.
So that was much longer than a 30-second commercial break.
Ryan has long 30-second commercial breaks.
All right. So I think a lot of folks that are listening to this are going to be sort of struggling with student debt. And I think we need to spend some time with that.
It's a systemic problem in society.
Yes. So what's an appropriate amount to have? What should we be doing with it? How long does it take us to pay it down?
Okay. For figuring out how much student debt to carry, you're going to have to do an estimated budget. I'm going to link to a student loan calculator in the show notes later, so you can go to that. So I'm just going to explain the process for right now. And maybe we'll do another mini cast where we actually go through and do this. All right. So let's say you were going into law school. Sorry, I'm going to use an example that I know. So and you want to be a lawyer in Houston. Figure out, before you do any of the student debt, or if you're in the middle of it, then try to figure it out from now so you know exactly what you can really manage. Figure out what the average attorney makes starting out when they graduate from school. Figure out what you're going to, depending on which law school you've chosen, what you are likely to have in student loan debts. Now, Now, there are different student loans. There are subsidized student loans. There are regular private student loans. For the moment, we're just going to lump them all in together because we're really just trying to come up with an estimate. Okay. So take that starting salary for a lawyer. Let's call it, working with something easy, let's call it $100,000. Figure out your net for the state that you're going to be in. Texas, you at least don't have to worry about income tax. Thank you, state income tax. No, so you just have to figure out your federal income tax and do your net from there. And then back to the 50-30-20 rule, I recommend that you, of the 50%, you have 30% of that is your fixed cost and 20% is your student loan. I just can't imagine being able to successfully manage anything more than 20% of a payment in the student loan. That's your likely payment amount, all right? Now go to the student debt calendar and calculator and take the total that you estimate that you're going to spend in school and run that through the calculator and see what your likely monthly payment should be. Now, if you're close, you can probably, when you go to budget, hopefully maybe you'll get a job that gets a little bit more than that. Or you can say, okay, well, I'm going to pull a little bit out of savings and a little bit out of discretionary income for a while. There are things you can do with repayment of student debt, so you can go through different repayment plans. So there's some lawyers would be big on this because their salary goes up aggressively. Or there's a lot of upward mobility in a lawyer's salary. So you can do something that's based upon how much you earn. So your payments, your first 2 years are lower, and then they bump up every 2 or so years as your salary goes up. So there's a couple of options like that you can work. So if your numbers are close, you're probably, if your number is much over that 20%, you're going to school for a degree that's not actually going to help you get out of debt. You're going to be drowning in debt for a very long time. And student loans sometimes can say, I forgot that part. Assume maximum the 15-year repayment plan, because sometimes student loans will allow you to have a 30-year repayment or 20-year or 30-year repayment plan. Okay, well, let's say you get out of school at 23. You do not want to be paying student loans until you are 43 years old. You just don't. And that's before we consider compound. I mean, it just takes up a lot of your stuff. And that's before we consider compound interest. We'll get to that in just a moment. But basically, the longer you take to repay a loan, even a student loan, the more it costs you. So it is entirely possible to end up paying, you've got a $30,000 student loan and you've got a 20-year repayment plan, and you end up paying almost 40 back because you were just paying the minimum payments as you went along. So aggressively paying off those student loans is a big deal. But I just don't see how in a proper budget you could spend more than 20% of your take home. On student debt.
Absolutely. And I think...
And once again, this is just an estimate because you don't have any of these numbers. You don't know what happened in school. You don't know what job you get.
And we're going to go through all this stuff in the mini cast. Like, like I said, camera over the shoulder, really sort of talking through all this stuff. I can understand, like, as you're driving and maybe listening to a podcast, that this could get a little like, oh my gosh, so many numbers. I need to
stop and take notes, yes.
But I think that what you're ultimately saying, and this doesn't just apply to student loans too, is that, like, interest either works against you or it works for you.
Absolutely.
There's no sort of like in between there.
Nope.
And any interest that's working against you is it's detrimental.
Yes.
Honestly, it's detrimental because it's siphoning money, little bits of money that you don't necessarily catch or care about all that much, but over time that money makes such a tremendous difference. Shifting gears a little bit, we talked about tithing. We talked a little bit about how that can be in kind. We're not necessarily talking about it.
And by the way, in case I'm using in kind is when you do, so let's say if you're going to do an in-kind contribution to a political campaign, you go and you volunteer to, stamp and lick envelopes. Right. You're giving your time. You do work. So instead of donating money, you donate time. Or skills.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that and how important that is. I mean, I don't know, do you have anything else to add about tithing or anything like that?
No, just I encourage you to, think generously.
Yeah, think generously, no matter what.
Even when you feel like you can't possibly pay for it,
Yeah. Even when it's small, it's big to somebody else.
Yep.
I think that's something to remember. Okay, so we talked a little bit about tools, Apple Pages.
Right, so you can find the basic templates there. There are some other, as your budget gets a little more complicated, you can move into certain apps. I don't even know if Quicken's still around anymore.
No, it is. Okay. They go by Mint now.
Okay.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I have a little bit of expertise using some of these.
Good, because I left them a while. Jim and I's finances we'd spent significant time as expats. When we first got married, he was actually still living and working in Geneva at the UN, and there was a tax restriction. Okay, our taxes were complicated from the get-go when we got married, and I found we ended up having to just go back to plain old Excel because it kept compounding certain errors.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of be wary for this, but yes, I would love to have you
absolutely
in the show notes give some advice on which apps to use.
There are two that sort of come to mind, and if you're looking for sponsorship, is Mint from Quicken, and then the second one was You Need a Budget. That's the name of the app. You Need a Budget. And honestly, what I thought was really cool about that budget, and it was a philosophy change for me, is that I was assigning jobs to money. So like when I got paid, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I just got paid $500, but really this $500 is for my cell phone bill that's on the 24th, right? So like my money sort of has this expiration date as I'm trying to use it. And then once it passes that expiration date, that means it gets to go into savings.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because like my money's done its job for the month. So whatever's left over now can go into savings. So
Jim actually does a version of that. So if we know that, like for instance, at the end of the year, we're self-employed, so payment is not normal over 12 months. So at the end of the year, he'll usually take our mortgage payment for the year and put it somewhere else, so we don't even see it anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Exactly. Totally. Okay, so basic tools for budgeting. Anything else on that? I don't think so. No. So what's the end result? Why are we talking about all of these things? And we understand that different people have different goals. Some of it might be to travel the world. Some of it might be to retire a certain way. Some of it might be to create a legacy and give it to grandkids. What are we doing?
The end result is the ability to support yourself through your working life, your retirement, and your parents' retirement. Because fun fact around here, the previous two generations, silent generation, which is now the people that are in their mid to late 70s and up, and boomers in general, for changing life expectancy, for a whole host of reasons that we can go in some other time, they don't have sufficient funds to schedule their own retirement. And when we're talking about 30-somethings, that's their parents. So you not only need to plan for yourself and your family, if that's in the plan. This is one of the reasons why I'm big on making a life plan, because you kind of need to know a little bit of a roadmap for this. But you need to have extra savings for the incidentals, for the surprises. It's a bit like what you were talking about, the 10%. If you're figuring out a debt, add 10% onto it. If you're figuring out money that's coming to you, take 10% off. Give yourself some wriggle room. Give yourself some flexibility.
Because otherwise, you're stressing yourself out for no reason.
Right.
Okay, boy, we still got a lot to cover. So we're gonna start kicking it into light speed here. So in this segment, we're gonna talk about basic financial concepts. Okay. And we've been talking a lot about it, but you've got to get your money to work for you.
Right.
That's my mantra. What does that mean? We talked a little bit about it, but give us some detail around it.
The biggest thing is you get compound interest working for you instead of against you. Okay. I will link to a Khan Academy video that describes compound interest below. But basically, it's when you have a loan, you've got a credit card bill, and you have a certain interest rate that they charge you for that. Well, if you don't pay it at the end of the year, then it goes into your principal. It becomes part of your bill. Okay, and then you start getting interest upon interest.
Yep.
Okay. Reverse happens if you happen to, now it's harder to find savings accounts with interest payments these days, but if you have some extra funds and you put them into CDs and stuff like that, then you can get interest working for you. So now you've got some savings that slowly grows over time, even if you don't touch it. So the biggest thing you can do is start to getting compound interest working for you, which is why paying off debt is one of the first things that you do, why paying off debt is some of the best form of savings that you can do, because the longer you prolong debt, the more you end up paying in the total bill. So back to the example from student loans, but maybe you have a $30,000 student loan that you're paying out over 20 years. By the time you're done with it, you've actually paid almost $40,000. That $10,000 you could have put, you wouldn't have been all of it because it would have taken you some time to pay. So let's call it $5,000. If you'd paid off the loan faster, then that's $5,000 you can actually put into savings. And then when you put it into savings, it actually, at the end of that period becomes $6,500 or sorry, I'm just making up numbers here for the sake of illustration.
I want to go to that bank.
Yeah. Don't we all? Don't we all? But yeah, get compound interest working on your side.
Yeah. And my quick anecdote for credit card debt is just don't get into it. I mean, I was 18 years old. I got a credit card from, I think it was US Air, like get these miles and blah, blah, blah.
And it feels like free money. When you're young, it feels like free money.
When I walked into the music store for the first time and swiped that card and I walked out with like an Ace of Base CD, I was pumped. I feel like I did.
Ace of Base, nice.
There's more copyright right there. Another one. But I walked in, it felt like it was unbelievable. It's like best feeling in the world. I don't have to pay for this for a month, right?
Right.
But then I didn't. So, and long story short, it went from 2,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 to 15,000. And I paid for that mistake. That was a very, very costly Ace of Base CD.
How much did that Ace of Base CD cost you?
I think it was $13.88.
$13.88. By the time you were done with it, you probably paid $20 for it or something.
Or even more.
Yeah,
it was a long time.
It was a long time.
It was a long time. It was a long time.
And that's before we get into all the other stuff that you paid for with credit card. Yeah.
That's why I had that little tirade about instant gratification versus delayed gratification earlier, because I understand that probably more than I should. Experience was a cruel, cruel teacher in that particular realm for me. So when you're single and you're starting off, you get that salary for the first time. So you get the job.
Oh gosh, and it feels like so much money. It does. No matter how small the salary, no matter how big the salary, when you're coming from, you'd been in school, everything. Gosh, it feels like a lot of money. You feel free. You feel like you can do anything. And all of that money, like you said, is spoken for. That actually, this needs to go to this needs to go to this. And if you haven't pre-planned, if you don't have that at least in your head, then it feels like, well, you have all this disposable income.
30-second commercial break here. I think one thing...
I'm timing it.
Yep, right? And I'm going to be fast on this one. I think the thing is that people also think, like, if I could only just get a raise.
Yes.
If I got a raise, all my problems would be solved. If I made X amount of dollars. That's a lie. Yes, it's nice to make more money. Yes, we all want to make more money.
Yes,
I promise
if you did...
Your budget is going to get jacked up. You're going to, there's no amount of money that you can make or not make that you can't have a plan for. Right. Every dollar that comes into your bank account needs to have a plan for it. Otherwise, you're going to get in some trouble, especially if you're not making a ton of money, right? And if you are making a ton of money, we see it all the time, athletes and things like that. They get a bunch of money, they spend recklessly, then they're broke.
Spend through it like water. Right.
So that's my 30-second commercial break. Raises don't fix financial problems.
No.
They only magnify them.
Right.
Okay, so what are some other must-knows if you're just starting out? So what are the other, very big potential points people need to be aware of?
There's a big thing now about penny pinching or making little savings. You've got a tight budget. Well, why in the world are you going to Starbucks? Why are you eating avocado toast? Okay.
Because I'm a millennial.
Exactly, you are. And there's some talk that that's not even worth it. You can't save yourself into prosperity. Okay. If you are already underwater financially, that is a bit true. But frankly, it's irrelevant to be talking about Starbucks and avocado toast because you're not eating that anyway. So it just sounds, that whole concept of, we'll just save on the little things. Well, they already don't have it. I mean, that's just nonsense.
You made bad decisions to get to the point where,
or you were just in the cycle of poverty and you just can't get out. And so, don't buy Starbucks is useless advice.
Yeah.
At the same time, if you're at the margin area, if you're one of those people that is almost making it but not quite, well, you know what? That $5 a day or $5 a weekday that you save at Starbucks, that actually adds up.
Yep.
So no, there is something to saving, delayed gratification, not blowing up your discretionary budget, stuff like that. So I see a lot of people just dismissing the penny pinching stuff because it doesn't work for people that are in a real budget crisis cycle.
Sure.
Okay, true, but that's not you. And if it is you, well then yes, these are bigger problems and you're not going to Starbucks anyway. Another big concept, always pay off your debt from the highest interest rate to the lowest interest rate. So for instance, if you run up a lot of credit card debt over 3 cards and a car note and a mortgage or a mortgage loan, line them up. Which one has the highest interest rate? That one gets paid off first.
Yep.
And especially if it's north of 15, just get it out of your life as fast as you possibly can. And even if you can consolidate and but anyway, highest to lowest, pay off the highest interest first.
As we're talking about this, we're going to add a mini cast because I think it's that important. How to negotiate these kinds of things, right? You can call a bank and negotiate your interest rate down. You can call a credit card company and negotiate your rate down. You can get your credit increase, right? By just picking up the phone. I think how you do that, a lot of people don't know how or what to say.
Well, a lot of people aren't aware that they can do
those kinds of things.
Right.
And you're literally you could pick up the phone and knock 5% off of your credit card bill that literally will save you hundreds of dollars over the course of a year, like that. So we're going to dive into that.
So yeah, interest is huge.
Yeah.
Then the other one is avoid being house poor, car poor, engagement ring poor. I mean, I know all of the, for instance, engagement rings. The thing is, 2 months salary. Okay, just don't max out those things. I know the normal, what you can spend on your mortgage is 30% of your take home. Don't
do it if you want it. Yeah.
Don't max it out. Those are great little formulas, and maybe once upon a time they were. Well, first of all, the diamond one is just because they want you to go off and spend money.
Marketing.
Right, exactly. But don't be stuff poor. Don't be asset poor, so that all of your money is tied up in a house that you reached a little bit too far for. All your money significant chunk of your money is tied up in a new car instead of a used car. The most expensive thing you do with a car is drive it off the lot.
That's right. It's 40% of its worth gone. Second it hits the street.
Like that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Buy used cars. I wish I could go back and give myself that advice. Don't buy new cars. Let's see here. I think lastly, we're just going to talk a little bit about saving for things versus paying down debt. What is that? Are they the same thing?
Mostly. I mean, while you have, as we talked about a little bit earlier, while you have debt, while you're paying off debt, it's actually growing. So the longer you take to pay off a debt, the more you end up paying in total. So
conversely,
right. Conversely, the more you have in savings, the more you can grow savings without actually touching it. But paying down debt is a form of savings.
Absolutely.
And then once you have no debt, save maybe your mortgage, well, then you can save. Yeah. All of a sudden, you can accelerate your savings.
Right, and that's what I was trying to get to, the long game, 45. Right. All of a sudden, I have next to no mortgage. I can do whatever I want with my life. It's amazing. Let's see, and I guess the last thing that I want to talk about is, where are the points where most people fail? What are some of the stumbling blocks? If you're going out, you're striking out, creating a budget, figuring this all out, what are some of the common pitfalls that people fall into?
One, not budgeting before they make major purchases, specifically apartments, houses, and or cars. Figure out what, use these budgeting tools to figure out what you can really carry in forms of loans and payments for those things before you go off and buy them. Because once again, when you first get the check, it feels like so much money. And so of course you can have this payment on this car. It's no problem whatsoever.
Of course.
But it's actually 50% of your take-home pay because you didn't do the math.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a big pitfall, and it often happens right as you get on your own, starting to budget. Another big pitfall, and again, as you're starting to get on your own, not talking about how to manage living expenses with your roommates.
/ significant other.
/ significant other, exactly.
Yeah. I would say, like, this is where fighting happens.
This is where
roommates relationships go sour.
This is where friendship goes sour. This is where relationships break up.
Yep.
Because it seems all fine. You know, the first couple months you move in, and of course we're splitting it 50-50, but then it turns out,
something happens.
Let's say you're living with 3 flatmates, and one of you is gone. You're a consultant, and so she's gone most of the time, and she's like, well, I'm not actually here. I'm not paying for the utility. I'm not using the air conditioner, so why should I be paying the utility and electric bill? Negotiate that stuff beforehand.
Yep.
To the extent that you can, and then figure out a few ways. Okay, if stuff changes, if we need to switch things around, how will we do that? Talk about that before you get into the space because then it's emotionally fraught, and it's also sometimes you got real money problems, and it can get hairy quickly.
Absolutely. Living on 2 incomes but saving on 1.
This comes up usually a little later when people are married to working household couple, and so you figure out all your expenses based upon two incomes, but you really only save based upon one of the incomes. So you're undersaving, basically.
Absolutely.
And it also makes it difficult. So if anybody gets into let's say one loses their job, if you're living on one income and the other income is bonus, it makes it a lot easier to weather. You've built in a little bit more give in your budget life.
Yep.
And especially early on, before you have kids, live on one income.
It's shocking when you go from 2 to 1 and then have a child all at the same time. I mean, that happened to me. I changed my job. Lauren stopped working, and we had a baby. It was like, and our baby had like dietary restrictions and all sorts of things. And I mean, y'all, a bottle of formula costing $13 is like, when they drink 1 a day, it's like shocking, like what that does to your budget.
Right.
It totally changes everything. So that's an important point, that if you have to, save on 1. The last point, using credit cards instead of debit cards, I just want to say one thing about this. If you get to the point, and this is and it's out there, and I want to get to this point, credit cards are awesome if you A, pay them off the next day.
Absolutely.
And B, use all the rewards that they can give you.
Absolutely.
Whether that's miles, whether that's cash back, as long as they're giving you things and you're paying it off right away, instantly, that's great. If you're not doing that,
if you're using,
it's bad.
Right. If you're using a credit card as an actual credit card, use them even if you have a credit card, use it like a debit card. Pay it off every month.
As quickly as humanly possible. Absolutely. That's a great marker of your financial health. It's like, man, my balance is going up. I'm paying it, but my balance is going up. That's probably a problem.
Yes.
So, holy cow, that was a lot of stuff to cover.
That was a lot of stuff to cover. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So a lot of great information there. So thankful.
At least 2 mini casts are coming out of that, maybe 3.
Yeah, I think 3, honestly. Okay. It's just been great to kind of like talk through these things with you and get a better understanding. I hope you all took something out of it. I know I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to this, like the more and more that we're doing it. Like, we're starting to get in our groove. It's getting exciting. I'm having a good time. So again, we're really thankful for you all. Please come along on the journey with us. If you know of anybody that could use this information, just do us a favor and just send it to them, share it to them. Not even so much for like our sake, but just for like people's sake. Yeah, honestly, like that's why we're doing this, is because we want to make the community of the world, I guess, better and a place where people can enjoy their life, right? I
want to give people tools so that they can make their own communities better, because I'm not in Poughkeepsie.
Yes. No. It took a wrong turn at Albuquerque. So anyway, Leslie, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Mostly on the website or at email, which will be on, my email address will be on the website.
Wonderful. And I am on Twitter at Ryan Taillon, RyanTaillon. I almost forgot how to spell my name right there.
That's brilliant.
True story. True story. Thank you guys so much for staying with us. Hope you learned something. Please, if you have any questions or feedback for us, we'd love to hear from you. So send us a note on Twitter or leave us comments on the website. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye.